Hey guys, this is my build with the Voltaic grenade with the Mercenary. I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like, how fun it is. I find it to be more dynamic and interactive than the usual poison grenade or explosive grenade that most mercenaries run. The reason being that it's got a lot of delayed damage and a lot of repetition. You're basically cycling through grenades, and it feels really repetitive. And that's what I was running during campaign and a bit of the cruel campaign, and I got bored and I wanted to try something different. And basically, this whole idea came because I was looking at the skill gems, and I noticed that the attack damage scaling on the Voltaic grenade was much higher than other grenades. In fact, the most impressive one in terms of scaling is in fact the flash grenade. So I'd like to try eventually and run a build around the flash grenade. It's just I'll have to figure out which passive nodes in the skill tree can boost the damage of the flash grenade. I need to find ways to boost it. It doesn't have as many synergies as Voltaic grenade does because of the fact that it's lightning damage. You can match this with other buffs such as Herald of Thunder, and also passive nodes which benefit from the electric damage. So yeah, so I'm just gonna run this map here. I'm already like halfway through. This is a T15. No, this is like a T16 map, level 81, because of the as you can see, it's irradiated as well as breach. So I'm just going to finish this map so you can see what the build looks like, and then I'll explain how to run it, how to get it, the gear to use, passive, skill gems, and all that jazz. Alright, almost done with this map. The map is complete. I will pour it out. I'll run one more map. This one is pretty much almost over when I started, and I'll show you the rest. Feel free to skip this part if you only want to see the skill gems, passives, and gear. But if you want to see what it looks like, how to play it, I'll give you guys a few pointers of how to position yourself, how to use your skills right in this next map that I'm going to run. Stash those things real quick. Wait. So, I'm gonna go and run this map here. This is going to be a like T17 type map, or even more, T18 actually, because I'll be using a T16 map, and it's irradiated and corrupted, so that's going to be an tier 18 map. So that's going to give you a good idea of what to expect out of this build in the end game, because the thing with mercenaries is you'll see a bunch of guides on YouTube that showcase builds that work well to level your mercenary, say in the campaign or even in cruel. But a lot of those builds will struggle during maps. And even some of the builds that might have a good time in, say, maps all the way up to tier 12, whenever you hit tier 14, tier 15, some of those builds will truly fall off. This is why I find that this video here should be helpful for you guys, because it's going to give you a clear idea of what you can achieve with this build, even in the end game. So the only downside of this build, and it's just not just the build itself, but the mercenary himself, is the fact that it's a bit squishy. So mercenaries right now are underpowered in the defense section because they do not have access to much life nodes in the passive skill tree or energy shield nodes in the skill tree. They do have a bunch of armor evasion nodes, But those only help you so much because the armor will reduce some of the damage that is incoming, and the evasion will help you evade some of the attacks, so like dodging or avoiding some of the attacks that you would receive. But eventually an attack will come through, and when it does, it can one-shot you. So that's why mercenaries right now are at a disadvantage unless they heavily invest into defense. There are some passive nodes that will give you higher maximum resistances for elemental resistances. But again, that will be insufficient because in the end, what you need in every class is a bit of a effective health pool, so EHP, to be able to handle some of those big hits. So the mercenary does have the sorcerer or sorcery ward in his ascension that you can use to defend yourself, but then again, it's not perfect because it's a thing that recharges every now and then. It's not always available, so one of the best defenses usually is a good effective health pool, which the mercenary does not really have access to right now. So it's a very high damage class. Mercenaries are fun for damage. Some are better, but it struggles in the defense department. So this next map I'm going to run is pretty much juiced up to the max, or almost. It should give me some trouble. I expect I might die in this map, but don't worry. You should be able to see how much DPS, how much damage I'm outputting, and the fact that I can pretty much handle this map comfortably. But yes, it's a squishy build, so you do have to be careful. But you can run high-end maps, and it's fun. Much more fun than other builds, so let's see. We're going to put in our little map here. Just going to look at the mods real quick, so I don't put in something that's crazy. Extra damage. I want to put it as T16 in actually. Temporal chains. It's not too bad. I don't like temporal chains, but I think it's my only T16 at the moment. I'm just going to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to run it like that. Where are we? Here. Is that the one? Yep. T16 map, so monsters have higher crit chance, bonus damage for critical damage, and temporal chains, which slow me down, but I should be able to handle it. The only scary part in this map is Delirium. If it's anything like PoE 1, Delirium gives enemies 20% more damage, and you take 20% more damage as well. It might be higher than that. It used to be Delirium had levels to it, whereas this here is pretty much flat. I do not have like the crazy passive skill tree nodes, well, the Atlas skill tree that would make Delirium much harder, so this is like the basic Delirium. So here goes.
Okay, you're looking a little pale, Exile.
Foul fool! Not yet. One down. Who's next?
Delirium makes the game lag a little bit for those certain breaches, so sorry about the FPS. Plus the fact that on live stream you might also bring the FPS down a little bit, but it should be easily. So I'm going to do a quick pause here to explain how to use your skill set or your skills here to the best of your abilities and to be able to profit from it. So basically, what you want to do is, as you've noticed, I'm mainly using two skills. They're your bread and butter, a Voltaic Grenade and Shock Burst rounds. So you use Voltaic Grenade for AoE and you use Shock Burst rounds for your single target. So whenever I'm faced with rare mobs, I will first drop a Voltaic Grenade on them until they're electrocuted or shocked, and I will unload with Shock Burst onto them with my weapon swap, which pretty much melts them down. Sometimes I'll use the emergency reload to increase the damage of that skill here. I also have a curse conductivity whenever I need to use it. I'll usually use it on rare mobs or unique bosses. I also have the artillery ballista. It's not all that great because it doesn't do lightning damage all that much right now. I expect they might eventually release different artillery ballistas with other elements, but at the moment I use it mostly as an aggro tool whenever I feel like I need to get the aggro off of me. Sometimes I'll use it as a tool to set up a fight. If I'm about to fight an Essence elite pack, I will use it. Or if I'm about to start a boss fight, I will lay it down. Oftentimes it'll give me the advantage that the enemy will focus the ballista instead of me, which leaves me to shock them, electrocute them, which paralyzes them. Sorry, English is my second language. Paralyzes them for 5 seconds. They can't take any actions. They can't attack. They can't do anything for 5 seconds. And during that time, they're under the electrical ailment of being electrocuted or even shocked or both. Which amplifies the damage that I will do with my single target skill right here. So this is basically it. Voltaic grenade, they get shocked, paralyzed, electrocuted. Use your shock burst rounds, curse them if you need to, emergency reload if you want to reload quickly with damage buff, and use the ballista as an aggro tool whenever you need to. You'll notice I'm also running Hailstorm rounds. I'll go into the links later, the support gems. But I use this as a get out of jail free card type of attack. Hailstorm rounds has the advantage of damaging the enemy without you needing to cast stuff all the time or being involved in the fight. So if I need to relocate, sometimes there are a lot of ground effects that are really dangerous and nasty. I will use that to continue the damage as I fall back or relocate. Or if I know that I'm about to start a fight, for which I have the advantage of being able to set up, again, the example of fighting Essence elite packs, I will lay down the ballista, start the fight and lay down Hailstorm rounds on top of the pack, and then I'll switch to my regular abilities for the rest of the fight. So yeah, this whole combo here is pretty nice. So I'm going to show you exactly what I just explained as I do this map.
This'll hurt. One back. Who's next?
I didn't notice the delirium drop earlier. I must have missed it. So as you can see, I'm one-shotting a lot of the mobs, and this is a tier 18 map. So that's pretty impressive for this build, considering.
Stupid zealot! Out of mana! No mana! Out of mana!
Done there. Take a look at the map real quick. Rare pack at the bottom. Okay, I'm headed the wrong way, so I'm just going to go ahead and kill that last mob. And then I will go to my hideout and show you everything else about the build.
Weak animal!
But yeah, as you can see, this build can handle a tier 18 map. And that's without too much investment in the gear either. Like, there are a few upgrades that I made that I remember the cost of them. But I think in total, everything that I spent that I didn't drop to upgrade my character was probably around, I want to say, 4 divine orbs total, which is quite reasonable.
Another notch on the helmet.
Okay. So, in the video description, I mentioned part 1 was gameplay showcase. Part 2 is going to be the explanation of the build. So I'm gonna go ahead and just find a page here real quick and explain it to you guys. There it is. All right. So skills and support gems. Turn off the map. So quite simple. Basically, your main AoE skill is the Voltaic Grenade. Obviously, you want to get it as high a level as possible. Don't be confused about the your weapon can have plus X amount to the level of all projectile skills, which is really good if you can get it alongside really high physical damage, flat physical damage, percentage increased physical damage. So you can either get a weapon that's got really good physical damage, maybe it doesn't have the +2 projectile skills, and it will be fine. On the other hand, you might get a weapon that has a bit lower physical damage, but has the +4, 5, 6, or even 7 to all projectiles, and it will give you a really good chunk of damage. So look at those. Look at your tooltips when you go in your skills here. You can hold the Alt button on your keyboard and click the sorry, not no, it's not that. Sorry. You go to your skills here, and on the little arrow here, you click. It will open a window here, and you can see your damage, average damage per use. Don't rely on this number only, because right now it looks like no damage at all. You'll see people on YouTube showcasing abilities that do 1,000,000 DPS or whatever, or 1,000,000 damage per use, and it looks impressive. But as you've seen, this grenade here does a ton of damage, even if the tooltip here doesn't really showcase it. So the reason why I brought you here to this window is so that whenever you compare a weapon and you are wondering whether the +2 skills or the physical damage is more important, you can test it out here. You can swap the weapon and look how much damage you're getting from the weapon or how much you're losing, and that will help you choose for the right weapon. So Voltaic grenade, the support gems are primal armament for me. I'm also using scattershot, ingenuity, sorry, I'm killing that word probably, ingenuity, yeah, lightning infusion, and then heft. Different gems can be used. I used to run the faster, what is it? I'm trying to show you real quick. It's right here. That one, fast forward. So I was using this before to help with the fuse duration, just to clear faster or have more interactive action with that skill. You can use other things as well. Lightning exposure could be one, execute could be another, close combat is another, anything that gives you more damage basically. But these gems I'm using here are really, really good, and I'll explain why. So primal armament, no explanation needed, more damage. Scattershot, obviously, 2 more additional projectiles. Even though you do 20% less damage, those extra grenades do a hell of a lot of damage. You need those. Ingenuity helps with the cooldown, which is really, really important, not to be underestimated. I'm trying to swap my weapon here. So the reason for this is that Voltaic grenade, currently, I have 3 uses, 3 cooldowns, right, or 3 uses of the grenades before I enter the cooldown. Look at my cooldown here, 1.28 second cooldown. That's really low. So that means with the current attack speed that I have and the cooldown, look at this. I can pretty much cast it infinitely. Whenever I run out of charges here, the cooldown is low enough that I'll get an extra grenade quite soon enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep shooting for a while. So now I'm running out of mana, but this build gains mana back from killing enemies. I'll show you how. So usually my mana is not an issue, and I can keep casting. Whenever I do run out of mana, I'll use a mana potion, but that is not needed too often. You'll be burning through mana potions a lot more when you're fighting a boss, probably. So yeah, cooldown is important. That's why I'm using Ingenuity. 30% increased cooldown recovery rate. And then heft for more physical damage, maximum physical damage. Lightning infusion, obviously more damage as well. So yeah, I think this is like best setup you could get for the Voltaic grenades. I've seen different setups to this. I've seen people use concentrated effect. Is that the word? Yeah, I think that's the name of the support gem. I'll show you real quick. I have it somewhere. Right here. No, sorry. One sec. Yeah, that's the one. Concentrated effect. That's a hell of a lot more damage, but 50% less area of effect. And I find that the Voltaic grenade's job in this build is really to clear stuff, to clear the mobs, to clear the trash. You need the AoE. In fact, as much as you can get is great. Not everyone will agree with this, but I find that I love having AoE. When you're doing content like breaches, delirium, where you're being swarmed with enemies, believe you me, you need the AoE. So I wouldn't use concentrated effect on that skill. It's gonna give you more damage for sure. You might want to swap to that support gem if you're in something like a boss fight, but even then, I'm happy with the setup I have right now. Plus I have a weapon swap for single target. So let's continue with the skills. We'll take grenade, and your second most important skill, shock burst rounds. This obviously will give you a clip of bolts that do lightning damage and do extra damage whenever you're hitting an enemy that is currently under a electric ailment. That could be shock or electrocute. Here it mentions, yeah, shock and electrocute. Yeah, so basically your Voltaic grenade builds up really quick the electrocute and shock status, and then shock burst rounds profits from that. So as soon as you notice an enemy paralyzed with electrocute, which is more obvious on the screen than shock, then you can unload with that thing here for 5 seconds straight without having to worry about the enemy attacking you back. Obviously there can be ground effects, or sometimes the elite packs, the rare mobs, will have like minions surrounding them. So maybe the yellow mob is currently electrocuted, you start shooting with shock burst rounds, and his minions might give you trouble. So it's not always possible to just stand still and unload and unleash hell on the rare mob, but when you are able to do it, it's quite satisfying. And a lot of the times, if you have a good distance between you and the rare mob, you can definitely do that. So this skill here are the gems that I'm using right now. You'll notice it's a 5-link. I haven't even 6-linked yet. It's quite expensive to 6-link, but I can afford to do it right now, but I haven't. It also helps with the mana cost, I suppose. But yeah, I will definitely 6-link eventually. So here are the gems. Ammo conservation, really good, because in a 21 clip that I have right now, notice how with that support gem, when I shoot, sometimes it will not cost a bullet, and therefore I can shoot a lot more than 21 rounds. Sometimes I'll end up shooting 30, 40, 50 rounds before I need to reload. And my swap setup that I have right now gives me a whole lot of reload speed and attack speed. So look at this. So sometimes the bullets are not being used because of that gem, which is amazing. Then the next one is Rising Tempest. Basically, it gives you more elemental damage for each skill used recently of a different elemental type. And you're at least doing lightning and fire damage because of Herald of Ash, and sometimes cold damage when you use Hellstorm rounds. So this support gem will often proc. Might not be the best of the best slot here, but I use it. Fresh Clip is also really nice. Support crossbow. Supported crossbow skills deal 1% more damage for each bolt reloaded by that skill in the past 6 seconds. So obviously whenever you run through a complete clip, you get 22 rounds that are reloaded, so this will proc, is great. And then Martial Tempo for even more attack speed, because this thing really profits and scales off of attack speed. It's amazing. Let me see real quick. I'll give you the 6th link, because this is a 5-link. I have saved it on the web here. I'm just going to go to my favorites. PoE. There it is. So for shock burst rounds, you can use Nimble Reload for even more reload speed. Close Combat is another good one, gives you more damage. Fresh Clip, we mentioned it in Martial Tempo. So yeah, the other two would be Nimble Reload and Close Combat. Right now I'm using Fresh Clip, but I'm not using Nimble Reload at the moment. I do not need it for now, but that's a good 6-link that I could use. So now let's go to the other very important ones. So Conductivity, I could have more links to it. It's fine the way it is right now. Expense, Focused Curse, and Arcane Temple are my support gems right now. Basically, Conductivity curses all the targets in the circle on the ground with less lightning resistance, and that's really helpful against tougher enemies that oftentimes will have lightning or elemental resistances. So this is really good for fighting tougher enemies. I usually will curse rare mobs, and all the time I'll curse the unique bosses with this to make sure my damage comes through. Artillery Ballista, very useful. It's not really lightning damage at the moment. There might be better ways to use this, and I suppose at one point GGG will come out with versions of this that make the ballista profit from electrical damage. Yeah, I have to verify this. I think the artillery ballista does proc some of the grenades that need the detonation to synergize, but yeah, I'm not using the synergy right now for that. So ballista, I use fire penetration, persistence, fire infusion, and acceleration. Now keep in mind, I am running the ascension of Witch Hunter, which does not allow me to use twice the same support gem for my abilities, so that's why I currently have this set up here. And then the two heralds, Herald of Ash. Basically what this does, okay, this is really important. There are hidden things that you would not think would happen with these skills, so we're going to go through that real quick. It's very important. Shock burst rounds. I'm just going to try and keep that window open if I can. Ammunition. That's not the one. Yeah, okay. Herald of Ash. Basically what it does is whenever you kill an enemy and you overkill it, meaning you did say 500,000 damage to the mob and it only needed 100,000 to kill it, then you have an overkill of 400,000, sort of, and that damage is used for an explosion which will ignite surrounding enemies. So this is part of why I one-shot things and clear really fast, as whenever I kill someone, the damage will splash AoE around them because of this Herald of Ash here. And I use it with cannibalism. This is really important. This is one of your main sources of healing. 4% of life recovered on kill while the supported skill is active. So this is a must-have support gem for the mercenaries. I would put it on any other skill if you want it elsewhere, but you definitely want it somewhere. Magnified effect. Surprisingly, one would think of using this on the Voltaic grenades, but given that I have plenty of AoE at the moment, I do not need to put this on the Voltaic grenade. It's much more useful on Herald of Ash because it ensures that you're going to get more procs and more AoE clear. Because basically this will stack, or yeah, be amplified with your Witch Hunter ascension, which I'll mention later. Clarity, this is a must as well. Mana is clearly an issue with this build sometimes, but if you build it right, you can circumvent the mana problems. But you definitely want some mana solutions. Herald of Thunder. This is very important. That's what I was talking about earlier. Hidden things that you would not think about. You see this skill. It's got lightning all over. You see the bow of the guy there holding the bow with lightning animations around his hands. You would think that this ability here can shock or electrocute, but it can't, at least not natively or innately. So as you can see here, here in the description, let's read the text. Where did I see this the first time? Yeah, in the tooltip. Okay, look at this in the little window here on the right when you click that arrow. Cannot inflict shock. I did not expect to see that. I noticed it when I was reading through the tooltip here. So yeah, Herald of Thunder does not shock. So don't look to Herald of Thunder as a source of, or a way of shocking enemies, because it doesn't naturally do it. So Herald of Thunder obviously is kind of like Herald of Ash, but a bit different. It says while active, killing shocked enemies with attack damage will cause subsequent attack hits to release lightning bolts, which deals attack damage to all surrounding enemies. So basically these two help with your AoE clear. This build is a lot about AoE clearing, and then you have your single target solution. So Herald of Thunder, basically whenever you meet the criteria, you'll notice here that it says killing a shocked enemy will cause your next few attack hits to call down lightning bolts. You want to quality this skill here. You'll notice all of my abilities have 20% quality. This is one of the ones you want to get quality for quite soon, because when you have quality, you will get more of your next attacks to proc that extra damage. Instead of, I think by default is 3, your next 3 attacks do extra damage and AoE. But if you have quality, it becomes your next 5 or 6 attacks. I'll have to check in my gameplay, but that's how I remember it. Yeah, so 2 extra attacks here on top of the 3, so that's 5. Yeah. Yeah, so this thing does not shock, but it does profit from your other sources of shock. Because it says here, killing shocked enemies. So basically, when your other abilities cause shock and you kill the minions or the mobs, the Herald of Thunder will proc and add damage. So these two are really nice. They cost 30 spirit each, I believe, for reservation. A little extra depending on which support gems you put in. So this one is a 15 extra spirit. This one just a slight bit. This one 10 spirit. This one none. A little bit here. A tiny bit here, and then none here. So right now I've got 100 spirit and I've got 15 to spare with these two auras. So those are the gems with their support gems. Emergency reload right now I've got premeditation. I used to have I can't say that word right. Sorry guys. Wow. Ingenuity. Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, but for that skill here, normally you'd want to use premeditation and more cooldown reduction if you can get it. But it's not too crucial. I guess there are other gems I could use. I haven't worked on that yet too much. But yeah, there are gems you can use there. We'll cover that later. So I think I pretty much covered the skill gems and the interactions between them. Oh yeah, just to showcase the cold rounds here. Hellstorm, I haven't used it really in the showcasing before, in the two maps that I ran. But yeah, sometimes I'll use it, especially if I can set up a fight beforehand. So I'll lay down my ballista, I'll click on the enemies, or I'll start the fight. I will select that, drop it, and it'll do damage while I can keep moving if I need to. And it's quite useful. It's cold damage, so it does not scale with all of my lightning damage. So it's definitely not a staple skill for this build. But it's useful in the fact that, like I said, you can relocate, you can move, you can escape while you're still doing damage. Okay, so let's talk about the passive skill tree. I think that's where we're up to now. Yeah, passive skill tree. Obviously, there's so many variations. This is not to say that this is the only way to run the build, but this is really, really good actually. So you'll notice that there are sections that have red to them. I'm just going to try and find them. Yeah, this is one here. It's weird, it's not as clear as it used to be. Huh. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning and show you the parts that are in both weapon swaps, and then I'll show you what's different. So basically you want to start out this way here, get your projectile damage. You can go and hit this one. Again, go to the left, go here, down here, get this section here as soon as possible. This is too good to pass on, so get this as soon as you can. And then you want to go down here and get this circle, the whole thing, as soon as possible on your weapon swap 1. You will get points for that eventually. If you don't have points for that, go ahead and spend the points, but whenever you can, put those in the weapon swap for just your first weapon, your main weapon. This is part of your AoE. You want that section because of the +1 cooldowns and your grenades, the extra projectile, so the extra grenade that you can fire. It will give you increased grenade fuse duration, but Voltaic grenade has the advantage of not having a very high or long fuse time. That's one of the reasons why I'm using it. The flash grenade is one of the best in terms of fuse time. So yeah, if you're listening to this, I challenge you to try and make a flash grenade build. I would love to see one. I'm thinking of doing one when I'm done with this. So when you've got this section here, you can progress and go down here and get this part here. Do not take this one here. This is for your weapon swap. So you go here and you get that. As soon as you've got that, you want to keep progressing all the way here, so you can get to the further section of your tree here as soon as possible. So you go here, you grab this thing here, then you grab this one. You go down here and get these two nodes, which are your bread and butter for this lightning build. It'll give you increased chance to shock, lightning pen. Here you get lightning damage with non-critical hits is lucky. Lightning tends to have a large roll or a large large spread in the damage. Imagine a dice being thrown. Whenever you are about to hit an enemy, a dice is thrown, and it's going to roll between, say, 0 to, say, 100, and whatever number you get is the damage you do. So if you're lucky, it will roll twice, and it will take the higher number of the two. And seeing as the spread is larger with lightning damage, this makes sense. So then, as soon as you've hit these two, you can continue progressing all the way here, so you can get this section here. So you get this, and you get this with your weapon swap 1, these two. And when you've done that, you can come back. The order is not crucially important. You could possibly do this after doing this section here, but eventually you want to go here and grab some of those lightning damage nodes alongside this one. This one is very important, especially since they've nerfed the electrocute buildup. Electrocute buildup used to be slightly easier. They haven't nerfed it like terribly, but they did nerf it a bit. So this will help you because it gives you increased electrocute buildup against shocked enemies, and also increased shock chance against electrocuted enemies. So these two complement each other really good. And with your weapon swap number 1, you can also get these two for AoE, so more shock chance, always good, and also the ability to spread the shocks to surrounding enemies. The radius isn't very high. There's a support gem you could use that will give you the same effect, but only on one skill for 2.5 meters radius, but I prefer using this here. So yeah, that's pretty much it for your early progression in terms of passive skill tree and your main skills, or your main spending. I'm also going to show you the difference between the weapon swap 1 and 2. So here goes. Before going there, when you've progressed all the way down here and hit this part here, and this part, and this little section here with these two, when you've done that, you can go ahead and go back here and progress to get more AoE. What I suggest doing is when you hit the maps, say tier 5 to tier 10 or 11, you do not have enough points to go all the way back there. So what you want to do to get more AoE, which is really important for your clear, you can go after getting these things here, go here and get yourself some more AoE here. You got really good area of effect here, 8%, 8% plus another 15. So that's really, really good. That's 31% increased area of effect for not too many skills spent. If you feel a bit squishy in the early mapping, you can always progress here instead of here for a little bit of armor and evasion, but it won't make that much of a difference, but you could always do that if you want to. So I did that. I went here for the AoE initially, and when I had enough points to go back there, I progressed down there to get all of these points all the way to here. I believe I was level 90 when I really swapped and respec to be able to go there. So before level 90, when you're done with your cruel campaign and you start mapping, you will be up here, get the AoE here, and you'll probably need attributes. Whenever you are lacking attributes, because in PoE 2, oftentimes you'll be attribute hungry for the requirements for your gear and stuff like that. You don't always get the luxury of choosing what armor piece to wear when you're progressing. Sometimes you're stuck having to use a chest piece that might have intelligence requirements or stuff like that, even if it's not ideal. Mostly you want your gear to be armor and evasion or strength and dexterity requirements, because that's what the Mercenary is built around. But if you do have to use a piece of gear that has higher intelligent requirements, then you can go here and get yourself all attributes. You can even get an extra 10% here and even some damage if you want. So feel free to go there earlier before you progress into the late game. It will help you with the requirements. There are some defensive nodes here that you can grab if you feel the need for them. I did at some point, but I didn't keep him for long. What else? Yeah, so you use this section here. You can also use some points in here before you hit level 90, so you can do extra damage to the rare and unique mobs. But you want this to be on your weapon swap eventually. What else? I'm almost ready to talk about the weapon swap, but I just want to make sure I've covered the bases. Oh yeah, for your ascensions. So when you get your ascensions, you want to get them in this order here. So first you spend a 2 here to get extra damage against low life enemies, Culling Strike, which will give you, because basically what you want to do is you want to have clearing speed to be able to progress faster, and Culling Strike is amazing. It will let you kill enemies if they're at 30% or below health. For normal enemies, 20% for magic, 10% for rare, 5% for unique bosses. And when you progress to your second ascension, you can get these two. So that's another extra 35% against low life enemies. And then Decimating Strike, which is amazing. Basically, if you hit someone that is at full life, you'll remove between 5% and 30% of their life right away before the damage of the hit is applied. So that is amazing. It helps you clear too, helps you with bossing. Clarification, when it says extra damage against low life enemies, low life is whenever they're below 35%, as you might have noticed from Culling Strike. Normal enemies, whenever they're below 30%, get killed. So those two extra 35% help you get those white enemies down to 30% faster, and obviously it will proc super fast the Culling Strike, and it also helps you get the enemies that are not at 30% and require more for Culling Strike to be procced. So say rare enemies require their health to be at 10% for this thing to be procced. So that's why, again, the extra damage against low life will help you, because when they reach, I believe it's 35% or lower, you will start doing extra damage to them, and it will help you get their life to 10% or 5 for uniques. So this is where you start, and as soon as you can on the third ascension, you get these two. An argument could be made that you can go here and here and then get these two before getting these two. It's up to you, but I did this first and then I went with these two. Afterwards I went with these to get more weapon swap points, but you could give up those to get, because honestly with the 24 points you get from the campaign and everything, it's quite enough actually. You don't have to have these two. If you are happy with 24 points, you can go ahead and get extra armored invasion and cooldown if you want, just these two. Or you could go and get the sorcery ward. I tried it, I didn't like it. You could even go with Witchbane. It's a bit tricky though, so I prefer it this way. Now let's talk about the weapon swap. That's really important to help you with your single target damage, which is very important in mapping. And then I'll go back a little bit and talk about the campaign progression. Weapon swap. Okay, so first off, when you click on this here, you can allocate points for your main weapon. So what you want to do is spend points as you would regularly without selecting any of this to get all the points I showed you that are mandatory for both weapons, right? So you do that, and when you're done with that, you press this button here and you go ahead and grab the ones that have to do with your AoE. So this here, this right here for cooldown, and what else? Yeah, for cooldown mostly. And then you go and get these two in your weapon swap, number 1. The whole circle here is weapon swap number 1. These two are weapon swap number 1. These two are weapon swap number 1 as well for AoE. And then these three for your weapon swap number 1 as well. Eventually those two. I started, but I haven't completed. And I think no, this one is for both weapons. Yeah. So I think that's it for weapon swap 1. In other words, what you want is for both weapons, if you see something that says area of effect and area of effect damage, or just area of effect damage, you want that for both weapons, because shock burst rounds has a bit of AoE there. You don't want to invest in increasing the AoE size of shock burst rounds, but you do want to increase the damage of the AoE, because basically shock burst rounds does its own damage, but it also does area of effect damage. So that's why I haven't put this one here in the weapon swap 1, because it helps both weapon sets, it helps both scenarios, single target damage and AoE clear, to have the area damage. So you keep that in both weapons. You get some area of effect here too as well, I think. Yeah, right here. So that's for your weapon swap 1. I believe these 3 are also weapon swap 1. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the weapon swap 2. This is for your single target damage. So this one here, what you want to do is once you've spent your, I'm going to say universal points, the points you use for both weapons, you can go ahead and assign points for your single target. So for single target, mostly what you need is attack speed and reload speed. So here you get your reload speed, and then you go down here to get your rare and unique enemy damage, because whenever you use your shock burst rounds, you're mostly dealing with a tough enemy, a rare or a unique. So you want all of these. I'm just going to hover around them so you can see what they do. There you go. So all of these for weapon swap 2. For weapon swap 2, we have these 3 we mentioned earlier. Then we have attack speed up here. These 3, you get them for your weapon swap 2. And then this whole section here. You'll notice that there is something here that does not apply to you. It says allies in your presence have 6% increased attack speed. This is for your minions. I believe it also applies to your ballista. So it's somewhat helpful for the ballista, but you don't get it for your ballista. You get it just so that for the amount of points you're spending, you're getting a decent amount of attack speed. It's not super optimal, but it's good enough to be picked up. And I think that's it for the weapon swap 2. There are some more attack speed nodes somewhere here. Well, actually, there are skill speed nodes, but they stack. They are additive, or additive. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to say the word correctly, but they add up with your attack speed. Yeah. So instead of this here, because it's a bit of traveling for me, I don't go there. I pick up something similar with my weapon swap 2 down here. So it does force me to spend some points that I don't really need on dexterity here, but I use it to get to here to get 3, 3, and 6% increased skill speed, which will give you a lot more attack speed against single targets. So that's great. It also says 6% of skill mana costs converted to life costs. You don't really spend that much mana when you're busy swapping your weapon and unloading shock burst rounds, so it's not really an issue. I only went there to get the increased skill speed, and I went there because it was less points for me to spend to get there. I needed to spend 6 points to get this whole thing here, whereas the other area I would have needed more than 7 points to get there, so it was more optimal to go there. And I don't remember if I mentioned it before. Your weapon swap 1, you also want these 3, and this is universal. You want it for both weapons because of the area damage. You do get some extra attributes along the way that are helpful. So the way that I path here, I get some armor, regen, strength. I also went and picked up the evasion converted to armor for some more damage reduction. It's not optimal. Honestly, this build, it's not for the faint of heart. It's very dynamic. You're always like relocating, moving, dodging shit, trying to survive. So it's more involved than the poison grenade build or explosive grenade build, where you can pretty much cycle through the same skills all the time, in the same order pretty much all the time, and it's a bit more boring, and there's a lot of delay in your damage, and it feels a lot less interactive, but it might be a bit safer. But this is much more fun because you're more involved, but you're squishy, so you got to be careful. You got to be mindful of those ground effects. You got to be prepared that in the really high tiered maps, T15, 16, 17, 18, you probably will die more than a big ass shield warrior will. I've got a friend who plays warrior, and he doesn't die as often as I do, but it's to be expected because I'm a bit of a glass cannon build here, and here he is a warrior. He's a more of a beefy guy, so it makes sense in the end. But I do enjoy this build because even if I do die, say a bit more often than my friend here, I can handle the late game content just fine. As you've seen, it cleared a complete tier 18 map, and I did not die. It was just fine. My damage could be higher. My weapon is not perfect, but it's pretty good. So I covered the showcase. skill gems, passive skill tree, and now we're going to talk about the gear. I'm going to keep this simple. The most important part of your gear is your weapon. So this is where you want your currency to go. When you do get some currency to spend, if you're lucky, you can craft your own weapon. If you're not lucky and you'd rather spend, this is a really good place to spend. Whenever you feel it, and you will feel it, when you hit a wall, as you progress through the campaign or the maps, you'll usually notice that you're all of a sudden lacking in DPS. Your main defense in this build is actually your offense. So sometimes you'll hear people say the best defense is offense. Well, this couldn't be closer to the truth than this build here. So you want really good DPS. So I remember I upgraded my weapon whenever I hit something like level 45. I upgraded it again around 60 or 55. And then I upgraded it again around level 75 or 80, I think. So every 15 to 20 levels, you'll probably need to upgrade your weapon. It doesn't have to be the best of the best or best in slot weapon, but you definitely want to upgrade it. What you're looking for on your weapon is, most importantly, flat physical damage, if you can get it right here. The higher the tier roll here, tier 7, the better. You want increased physical damage percentage as well. If you're lucky, you can get it on a prefix, and you can even get it a second time on another prefix. Usually it will be a hybrid prefix that will have something like physical percentage, increased damage, along with accuracy rating. So you can get all the way to like 200% physical damage on top of a flat fizz. So you're looking for flat fizz, percent physical damage. If you get some flat elemental damage like cold or lightning or fire, that's still good as well. So on your prefixes, you're looking for damage, damage, damage. On your suffixes, you're looking for attack speed if you can get it, but most importantly, you're looking for to level of all projectile skills if you can get it. Between 3 to 6 is amazing. You can even get 7. And then on the last suffix or suffixes, you can look for attributes if you need them, like strength, dexterity. You can also get stuff like life on kill, mana on kill, or life leech or mana leech. The most useful ones would probably be mana leech and mana on kill. I do like mana on kill slightly better than mana leech. Mana leech is better for bossing and long extended fights, whereas mana on kill is really good for sustaining continuous spamming of your voltaic grenades against large packs. So this is for your weapon. Obviously this is a item level 82 crossbow. Your crossbows from earlier in the campaign or cruel will look different, but this is what you're looking for. At this point in the game, I'm hoping to find a crossbow that will give me more around, say, 600 DPS here for the physical damage. When I do the price checking tool on my crossbow, notice that the DPS or damage per second is 541, and I'm currently level 90 running tier 15, 16, 17, 18 maps. So with this amount of DPS, I'm just fine. Obviously you want a quality weapon, socket it twice and put, I think it's iron runes in the weapon for another 20% extra physical damage twice, so that's 40%, as you can see here in the implicit line that is a bit paler right here. When you buy a weapon upgrade, be careful, because sometimes you might look at the weapon that's the highest level requirement. So let's say you're level 55 and you buy a weapon that requires level 55. Sometimes when they're really close to your maximum current level, sometimes they might have strength or dexterity requirements that are just a tad bit higher than the current attributes that you have. So be mindful when you buy a new upgrade for your weapon to make sure you have enough attributes to be able to wear the weapon. It's quite easy to circumvent if you're lacking a few points in strength or dexterity. You can work around your passive skill tree to get that, or even on your gear if you need it. So that's for the weapon. I'm going to talk about the two most important other gear pieces. So crossbow, obviously the most important part of your gear. And then on your gloves, if you can get it, you'd be happy to find flat fizz or flat damage as a prefix, along with mana and life. Now, You want high rolls of maximum life and mana on all your gear pieces as much as possible, because you'll be mana hungry quite a bit. I'm level 90, I've got 1500 mana right now, and sometimes I run out. You definitely want more mana, because the second you start linking a lot of slots in your skills, like so, like 4 link, 5 link, or 6 link, you will start having higher costs for your grenades and your shock burst rounds and stuff, especially your grenades. As you can see, I've got 304 mana cost for the grenade. That's quite high, but I make it back when I kill enemies and stuff like that, so that's fine. But yeah, mana is an issue. Mana is a problem, so you definitely want life rolls, mana rolls on your prefixes, on your gear as much as possible. Other useful prefixes can be obviously life percentage, flat damage, maybe armor and evasion if you want, stuff like that, but mostly life mana. Yeah. You might even want to sacrifice sometimes, like you might even want to go a lower life roll if you can get a fat mana roll, because you do need, when you start out, when you are doing cruel, you're doing mapping, early mapping, you don't have that much currency, it's easier to buy maybe a piece of gear that has a slight bit lower life roll but does have a really fat mana roll, which you need. So let's look at the gear real quick. So the gloves here, flat damage, life mana, attack speed is amazing if you can get it. I've got a single res. The leaf, the life leech, physical damage, is okay. It helps out, but it's not crucial. The belt here, same story, life, mana, resistances on the belt, that's what you're looking for. Now on the boots, obviously movement speed if you can get it, life. Sometimes you might have boots that have mana, but I noticed some bases do not ever roll mana. So on your boots, it's fine if mana's not there. This right here, by the way, is one of the bases, one of the best bases for the Mercenary. The best one is actually the Expert Stacked Sabatons. I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but yeah, so those types of boots are good. Armor and evasion, movement speed, resistances, life. Your chest piece, this is an example, but you don't have to have exactly that one. It's got life implicit, the 74 life there. It's got a really good life roll, armor and evasion, chaos resistance. It's not perfect, it's got a good life regen as well. A beast version of that chest would probably have even higher life and more resistances. The 19 strength is nice because it's more life as well, but it could be better. It could be another resistance probably, but this is what I could afford at the time. The amulet, pretty good amulet. It's not like super damage oriented, but seeing as the Merc really lacks in defenses, this is a really good example of the kind of amulet you could go for. You don't need the energy shield that much because you do not have energy shield nodes in the tree accessible to the Merc too much, but it's still effective health pool. So you got energy shield, life, mana, attributes, because you're often looking for attributes in this build, so when you can get attributes somewhere, it's not bad to have it. All res and fire res, so a well-rounded amulet. Not the best. A badass version of this would have +2 projectile skills instead of the energy shield probably, or instead of maybe the attributes, something like that. I am going to swap to a more damage-oriented amulet eventually, but for now this works well. I allocated Primal Growth to the amulet, which is really, really good because it gives you an extra 30% area of effect for this build, which is amazing. The condition being you have to have killed recently for the extra 20%, but the other 10 is flat and it is always there. So this is a really good distill to get on your amulet to give you more AoE. There are other ones that you could go for. You could go for this one here for magnitude, increased magnitude of your shocks, mana regen. You could even go for this one, increased shock duration, mana. You could also go for this one, increased lightning damage and shock duration, or this one, increased damage with hits against shocked enemies. I'd wager that the second best one would be this one, but I currently think that this one I'm using is the best. Right here, this is just too good to pass on, especially for clearing. So let's continue on with the gear. We covered the belt, the helmet, again, life, mana, resistances, You try and cap your resistances as soon as you can during mapping, so you try and get 75 everywhere. You'll notice that my chaos is not even capped. I've got 74, but that's okay. It's decent enough. The rings. On the rings is where you will get your highest mana rolls, probably. So a good mana roll, life roll, attributes if you need them, resistances if you need them. I tend to shoot for, aim for rings that have at least 80% resistances on them, like spread out, say fire, lightning, whatever. If it totals about 70 to 80% elemental resistances, that's a good start. And then I'll get the other stats that I need, like life, mana, attribute. On the other ring here, life, mana, all res, cold res. As you can see, none of those pieces are absolutely perfect. I did not invest like 100 divines in my gear. It's just decent stuff, balanced stuff. The extra fire damage kind of works with your hell of fire, but it's not the best stat that you could have here. Actually, the best rings would have about the same as this, but they would have flat fizz in the prefix. So you would want to have flat fizz, life, mana, maybe an attribute, resistances on your ring, and on the other ring, same thing, flat fizz, or attack speed is also good, life, mana, all res, or resistances in general. Attributes are always a good thing to have sometimes, depending on what you need. So those rings are not perfectly optimal, but they're good. Good enough for this build. And for the weapon swap, I haven't shown you the main weapon. This is the weapon I used. This is the one I used for AoE clearing. It's got more levels to the projectile skills, but mainly it resembles the other weapon. If you look at my DPS here, the Voltaic grenade, whenever I wear this weapon, it says 7k damage per use, right? If I swap to the other one, disregard the damage that you see right now. So let's wait a little bit. Okay, sometimes there's a little buff that runs out, but as you can see, it's pretty much the same damage. 6.4k versus 7.1k. Obviously, this one does a little bit more damage because it's a slightly better weapon than the other one, but barely. So yeah, so for your weapon swap, ideally you want two weapons that do about the same damage when you look at your tooltips here. That way, whenever you swap, you don't lose out too much damage. You don't want to have a single target weapon that does like 50% less damage than your main weapon, because then there's no point in having the whole single target setup with the passives, swap and everything. So yeah, two similar weapons, you can get them. Also, in a perfect world, I would have this, a crossbow that has this passive here, grenade skills, fire, an additional projectile, alongside these kinds of stats, right? If I could get a +2 projectile skills with a very high flat fizz and fizz percentage roll, alongside the implicit here of grenade skills, fire, and additional projectile, that would be amazing for Voltaic grenades. And then on your weapon swap, on your weapon swap, you could, well, arguably you'd want a crossbow that has the high damage alongside the loads an additional bolt, I guess. I do not believe that there are crossbows right now that have a implicit that give you attack speed, but that would be amazing. That would be, if they ever release new crossbows that come with a implicit of attack speed, that would make your weapon swap best in slot crossbow to get. But you have to make do with what you find. So at the moment I do not have the extra grenade launch on the crossbow. At this point where I'm at, if I want a perfect crossbow with this base here, we're talking 100 to 150 divines. So I'm not there yet. So those are the gear pieces. Notice that I've put runes that give me a little bit of chaos resistance on the gloves, and everything else is percent life to give me more EHP. Is that the best use of the rune slots? I think so. You might want to use resistances if you're lacking in your resistances. Say you're in early mapping and you don't really have your resistances capped, then yeah, you could slot in resistances in your rune slots to cap that, and then life is great. So yeah, it's not even best in slot. If you look at my helmet here, it's not even the best base. The best base would be this one. Expert shielded helm. but I haven't gotten one that has these stats yet. So I'm a father of 3. I don't have all life to play, so I do with what I find, and I craft some of my stuff and I buy some of my stuff. I don't have like crazy amounts of hours to spend on the game to farm currency. So this is the build right now. For the charm I use this, but you could use whatever you need. If you're lacking chaos res, you could use a chaos resistance charm to help you compensate. Oh yeah, for the flasks. Usually I like to have flasks that gain charges by themselves every second. It helps for prolonged fights where you're struggling with a hard boss. And same for the mana. The first line, the first affix you see there could be something else, but the second one I find very useful. I suppose there are other combos that could be good. And the last thing to cover, what is it? Oh yeah, the leveling. Okay, so the last thing to cover is what to do in the different parts of your progression. So I won't talk about the first campaign, but for cruel campaign, mapping, here's what you want to do. So obviously for cruel campaign, you want to hit all these side quests that give you extra passive skill points to spend, that give you buffs like elemental resistances, stuff like that. So don't miss out on those. Do them. As soon as you hit a wall in terms of DPS in your cruel campaign, definitely get yourself a weapon upgrade. Normally, like around level 45, you should be able to get a weapon upgrade for a few exalts, or barely. So that should be fine. When you hit level 60, 65, and you need a weapon upgrade in that area, it should cost you between 5 to 15 exalts, maybe 20, to get a decent weapon upgrade. And when you hit around level 75 is when they will cost more, probably around 50 to 60 exalts for a really good weapon. And when you hit somewhere around level 80-ish or higher, level 85, and you want those kinds of weapons, you're talking like maybe 1 to 6 divines to get something like this, or you can craft it yourself. So yeah, it's reasonable. It's something you can achieve with just solo self-found. You don't need to go crazy farming like no life. So that's for the weapon progression. When you do your cruel campaign, if you struggle with surviving, you want to look for upgrades that will give you more flat life, because that's going to help you survive. And you want to make sure that you, if you are in cruel, you want to start trying to max or cap your resistances if you can, or if you feel too squishy during the cruel campaign, you can invest in those little nodes here we mentioned that give you extra armor and evasion. You can even repath here, like we mentioned before, to get some more toughness. There is even a section of the tree over here that gives you more maximum resistances that you can go for. I think it's around here. But I didn't go there during the campaign. It should not be needed. Other things to invest in cruel campaign. Trying to remember. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to say when you're progressing through cruel campaign, salvage the pieces of gear you find that you don't want to use, that are bad. Let's say that this bow. Let's say this bow would be bad. You can salvage it so you can have Artificer's orbs. To have rune slots in your gear, because those are really easy. And then in cruel campaign, another thing you want to do is definitely invest in your gems. And by invest, I do not mean go crazy and spend like crazy, but just using your own currency that you drop. Try and improve the quality of Voltaic Grenade, Herald of Thunder. Herald of Ash is not too necessary for the quality, but Voltaic Grenades, Shock Burst Rounds, definitely want to increase the quality on this thing. It's going to give you extra bullets. Yeah, so get the quality on those. And then in terms of linking during Cruel Campaign, definitely get, I want to say, at least 3 link, 4 link on Shock Burst Rounds. And as soon as you can, get your 4 link on Voltaic Grenade, and then 5. And 6 is luxury. You can get your 6 link whenever you hit like in the 80s, level 80s or whatever. You don't need 6 link when you're like level 60 or 65. If you can afford it, sure, but it's not a mandatory thing at that moment in the progression. I think that's pretty much it. In terms of like getting your gear upgraded for cheap, like I did, without spending too crazy amounts. Just play with the stats when you price check using PoE Overlay 2 or whatever. look for the stats that you want, lower some of them if you need to get the prices. You'll be surprised to see that oftentimes there will be people willing to sell at a decent price, and you just tweak, just play around with your search criterias, and you will find something that maybe doesn't have that crazy mana roll, but maybe it has something decent that you can upgrade to for a decent price. So oftentimes what you can do is look for, say, a pair of gloves like this that has a decent life roll. Say you're at the end of Cruel, it's got a life roll of 80, 90, 100 on the gloves. And in the mana department, you get say 60, 50, 70 mana. Not optimal or not perfect, but you can still go for it. Your main concern when you're in Cruel is just making sure your gear is giving you a little bit of everything, and with a greater focus on certain things. So as you're progressing with your gear upgrades and you shop for cheap upgrades, definitely focus maximum mana. You will need it, definitely focus on that. Get yourself some max life as high as you can for the, or bang per buck, you know, for the cost. Get yourself as much life as you can. Try and max out your resistances, especially when you start doing mapping. You probably won't feel the need for your resistances to be completely maxed in the first 5 tiers of maps. Say if 0 to 5, or even from 5 to 10, you might even be able to survive without maxing your resistances. But as soon as you pass the tier 10 section of the mapping, you will start wanting to have your resistances capped above 75%. So yeah, so that was for Cruel. And when you start mapping, you want to continue upgrading your gear. That's when you're in mapping, especially past tier 10, that's when you want to start working on your 5-6 link and Voltaic Grenade if you haven't done so yet. That's when you want to try and get from your skill tree as much grenade related nodes, as well as AoE, as well as shock related nodes. I even had this section here for a little bit. You can use that if you feel the need to have it. I think I failed to mention this section here for the weapon swap. It gives you attack speed. So for mapping, I'm just trying to remember if there's something else that is important. Yeah. When you start doing your maps, I'm just going to go to starting area. You'll start here. What you want to do is just progress and get yourself the quest by going to this red monolith section here. So go here and get that. It'll give you a quest. And then you have to do a certain amount of tier 1 maps, tier 2 maps. Get on that as soon as you can. Basically what you want to do is, as you progress through maps, get those towers, get the tablets in them to get even more buffed maps. But in terms of the build, when you're in maps, what you want to do is make sure that you're always making sure you have a really good DPS weapon, and that you have your skills set up. Also, during mapping, you want to get higher level for your skills. So you will drop, like, say, level 14, 15, 16 gems. Try and get yourself to the next level whenever you can, not just from drops, but sometimes even through trading, if you can get it. Because contrarily to PoE 1, the level of the gem has a big influence on the attack damage scaling of your skills. It used to be that it was more like mages or sorcerers, whatever, that were more affected by this in PoE 1. In PoE 2, the level is quite important, so try and invest in making sure you got a level 17, level 18, level 19, and eventually level 20 gems to get extra damage. You can achieve that through +2 level of projectile skills, but you want that during mapping. This is going to be very important, the level of your gems, especially Voltaic, Shot Burst, and the other ones. Yeah. And your heralds. Yeah. During mapping, what else was important that caused me headaches? Well, obviously, your worst nightmare or difficulty in mapping is going to have to work around your attribute requirements, your mana issues at times, and your amount of points that you have to spend. You'll want to go places that you can't right now, so you have to make do with what you have. So you'll have to tweak around with those. But with what I gave you, you should be able to have a good idea of what to do, and you can work around that to make sure everything is fluid. And during mapping, what else? The build is really, really good at handling rare mobs and even bosses. So this is one part of the mapping you can do comfortably. Yeah, the build can handle stuff well. Since you're squishy, one of the things that is a bit trickier when you start mapping is doing rituals. So if you want to make sure you level up, because you start losing XP when you die at a certain point during mapping. So what you want to do is when you map at first, if you feel like avoiding the rituals in order to avoid death early on, you can do that. It's not to say that the build can't handle it. It can handle it quite comfortably, but since you're a bit squishy, a bit of a glass cannon with this build, rituals is a tight arena where you can get swarmed and overwhelmed and sometimes stunned, and if that happens you can easily die. So I would advise, if you are struggling and you're trying to make sure you do not lose XP, you could try and avoid the ritual content early on until you feel comfortable running them. You can always test it and see if it feels comfortable, but it's one of the areas or content that you're a bit weaker to do. On the other hand, breaches is a breeze because you've got a whole bunch of AoE, and with the Ascension, we haven't talked about that much, but with the Ascension, with your culling and your ability to do damage to high health, low health enemies, and these two here are insane. This right here, 10% chance for enemies you kill to explode, dealing 100% of their maximum life as physical damage. That's really amazing, and the chance is doubled against undead and demons. So when you combine that with your Herald of Ash, you're talking serious AoE. So yeah, breaches are a breeze with this build, pretty much. You're still squishy, so you have to be careful. But yeah. One of the areas that is a bit difficult early on in mapping with this build is bossing in some areas. Because with your setup, you can take down bosses quite effectively, but seeing as you're squishy, if you don't dodge a certain boss's mechanic right, you can get one shot sometimes. A lot of the fights with bosses sometimes are luck based, you know. There are certain moments. What I want to say is, when you enter a boss fight, you don't always know by heart exactly what he's going to do, when, how. So that's why the two contents, if I can say it this way, where you can expect to die sometimes as you're progressing is probably rituals and bosses. So it's not to say that the build is weak, it can't handle these two things. It can definitely handle it, but it's just to give you a little bit of a warning that those two sections is where you can expect to sometimes die. And honestly, that's fine, because even with my sometimes I die, I can catch up, I can do a whole bunch of XP still. I have so much damage and I can progress so well. I have so much damage I can do. I can get gear, I can get currency quite easily. So it's not too much of an issue, but just to give you a heads up that those two are the areas where you can expect a bit more trouble. So that's when you want to be less aggressive, because that's the thing. When you do all of the mapping, you'll feel like everything is quite easy with this build, right? Everything is going well, nothing is too hard. And you can get a bit surprised when you enter into a very like juiced up ritual map. Not this one, but let's say a ritual map that has a bunch of like corruption and irradiated. That's when you can be surprised, because all of a sudden you get jumped on and your squishiness is exposed. Same with bossing. If you're fighting a boss early in mapping, you should be fine for most bosses. But if it's a very juiced map with a bunch of negative mods that are affecting you, just be mindful. Tell yourself, okay, I'm going to stay back a little bit more. I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to use my ballista as an aggro tool. I'm going to curse the boss. I'll hit him, and as soon as he's shocked and paralyzed, I will unload on him. You have to be very disciplined in the way that you fight with this build against bosses and in rituals. If you're playing with friends, it's even worse in the sense that enemies can be tougher, so just be mindful of your squishiness. You're a glass cannon, so expect yourself to dish out a whole bunch of damage, satisfying loads of exploding grenades, you know, an AoE clear and single target damage. It's a very satisfying build to play, but just be mindful that you are indeed a bit squishier than other classes. You do not have the advantages of other classes that get a bunch of energy shield here, or max life, or defense mechanics. So you have to be respectful of the role that you play, the character that you have here in your hands. Something that can dish out a whole bunch of damage, but it is also a bit of a glass cannon. So yeah, you keep those things in mind. It should go well for you. So that covers pretty much everything you need to know about this build. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about all the mechanics of the game, but this should give you a head start and give you an idea of what to do. And I suppose people will improve this build. There might even be versions of this build that are better at the moment, but this is what I did with it, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it's not a perfect build. My gear is not top tier at the moment. It's just, you know, it's decent. I did what I could with what I found. The last thing I'm going to cover, because it's good to know, is how to craft yourself a good weapon. Let's say you don't have the currency to spend on an upgrade. You can definitely get yourself an upgrade yourself. So here's what you can do. As you progress through Cruel and mapping, you will get gold and you will get currency. What you want to do is be on the lookout during Cruel for any crossbow that says advanced. Okay, advanced forlorn crossbow or advanced bombardier crossbow, whatever it is, bombard crossbow, advanced expert tense crossbow, stuff like that. Advanced is the level just below expert. If you see expert weapons during Cruel or early mapping, definitely grab those and throw them all in a stash. All of them, whites, blues, rare crossbows, keep all of them, put them in a stash. Whenever the stash is full, go and start crafting some of those crossbows. Here's what you can do. You can go to your essences and use Essence of Torment to guarantee a blue item or transform a white crossbow into a blue crossbow or magic crossbow with a guaranteed physical mod on the crossbow. Obviously, if you're unlucky, you'll get something like Physical Leech on the crossbow, which is very common. If you're lucky, you'll get Flat Fizz or physical damage increase percentage. And once you have that, what you want to do is you can either use a greater Essence of Torment, but I wouldn't do that because it's quite expensive. So you can use your Essence of Torment and then you can augment, because that will be cheaper. And you just keep doing that. Don't get discouraged. In the PoE 2, you could possibly run through like 50 to 100 maybe crossbows before you run into a godly upgrade for yourself. But it's not expensive to do. It's quite easy. You just pick up the white crossbows that fit the base that you want. For this, you can go to PoE2.db, I think it is, the PoE2DB website database. You can find information about all the bases, all the crossbows that there are. So just to get back to this, how to craft yourself a god weapon, a really good upgrade for yourself, quite easily. Just stash all the crossbows that are good, that give you, when I say good, I say the base of the item. I don't mean that the stats are good, just the crossbow itself, okay? No matter the stats. If the crossbow sucks, doesn't have Flat Fizz, is blue, whatever, as long as it's an advanced or expert crossbow, pick it up, put it in a stash. If it's white, transmute it, and then augment it, or use an Essence of Torment if you have some to spare. Okay, if you land a Flat Fizz roll or a physical percentage roll with your first 2 rolls, by this I mean when you upgrade from white to blue item or blue to rare with Regal, what you want to do is look for those 2 starting stats. If you can get yourself Flat Fizz, Fizz percentage, or even plus to skills, projectile skills, keep the weapon and start spending currency on it to make it better. I'll give you a clear example of what I mean, okay? I'm going to pick up, this is a perfect example, white crossbow, And I'm going to do this over and over again, and I'm not afraid to spend the currency. I don't spend crazy amounts, but I will invest some currency to make a decent weapon if I have the rolls that I'm looking for. So here's a clear example of what to do. You stash all the crossbows you come across that have advanced or expert, and then you put them here. You don't quality them yet. You don't use whetstones on them yet. Okay, what you do is you transmute. If you are in cruel campaign, you don't have like a tons of essences to spend. So what you can do is just transmute the crossbow. In this case here, since I'm looking and dreaming and fantasizing about having a bombard crossbow, I'm going to go ahead and try and use the essence to give you an example for this crossbow. If it was another base, I would just transmute. So let's get ourselves some essences. Torment. Okay, 5 is good enough to start. I'm just going to get 5 real quick. Or not. 1 sec. Yeah, that's fine. Let's go. Okay, I got some. Okay. So, Essence of Torment to give me a guaranteed physical mod. As you can see, that's a disappointing roll. It's a tier 1 flat fizz, so that's not good enough to invest currency into it. So I'm going to put this one aside. I will augment it though, just in case I hit a really good second mod. If I were to hit something really good on the second mod, say flat fizz or fizz percentage, I could then regull it, and then I have 3 stats, 2 that are good, 1 that is bad. I might Chaos Orb the crossbow to get rid of the bad stat. It's a gamble, but sometimes it's worth it, and then I can work from there. I'm going to put this crossbow in the stash. So what I'm doing right now, pay attention, because even though this looks like a bad crossbow, the method that I'm using right now is really good. So I try to make something good with this. The base is not good. We didn't land any of the mods that we wanted. We put it in the stash, and as soon as you get 3 blue crossbows of the same base, right, you look at the item level, and hopefully they're all close together. See, item level 80, 79, 81. They're close enough. I can take all 3 of them and reforge them. I'm just going to put away some maps here and some of my currency so I can work better. Almost done. I'm just going to put this away real quick. Jewels. Okay. And this will go. Okay. So I'm just gonna ID this bowl real quick. Not good.
Hey.
Go on.
All right, we're ready.
Go.
So let's continue. I'm gonna try and craft a crossbow. Okay. The way that you would if you were in cruel campaign or early mapping. So here's a crossbow. Let's say I got a few of them. Another jewel in the way. Let's put it away real quick. Like so. Okay, so once you've crafted or did a few attempts, failed attempts at making a decent weapon upgrade, you get all 3 of the same base, same rarity, go to Reforge, dump them all here, Reforge. If you're lucky, you'll get a decent, see, physical percentage damage here. It's not great, it's T1, but it could have been higher. So if it had been higher, automatically I would have augmented it, hoping for a good roll, and then continue from there. So see here right now, the fizz roll is too low for me to consider this crossbow. It's got decent attack speed. I could try and make something out of it, but just for the sake of the example here, I will regal it just to show you what happens. So let's say you regal and you hit a decent 3rd mod, like flat fizz or more fizz. You can then exalt and try and get something better. Right now this is not good enough for me to keep, so I'm just going to put it in the stash again. Notice I'm not selling it to the vendor. I'm not throwing it on the ground. I'm not, destroying the weapon. I keep it, because eventually I will have 3 of the same that are rare, and I'll reforge them as well, right? So this is how you do it. I'm going to show you with this base here. Yep. So see, I got 3 blues here. I'm just going to augment this one. So I've got nothing crazy good here, right? So reforge all 3. And you keep doing that over and over, and I'm telling you, it will work eventually. That's how I got this weapon, and this is how I got this weapon. Both these weapons were crafted, not bought. It's kind of obvious, I guess, from looking at the weapon. It's not perfect, but yeah, you can easily craft them. So this is obviously is not good. So you put it back in the stash, and you do this over and over and over, and eventually you get a decent upgrade without having to spend too much currency. See, I have a white one here. We're going to try again with this one. We got through 3 yellows here that I can reforge, and a few blues here. So let's just go ahead, take the white one. You could obviously alchemy orb the crossbows, but that's a lot more expensive. So what I do is, seeing as this one has the additional bolt thing in it, I'm going to try and use an essence on it as well. So, Essence of Torment. Increase physical damage. This is a hybrid roll. It's not good, but I'm going to try and augment. So, still not good. So, this goes into reforging. So, reforge. So you can pretty much see what the process is, and it looks bad right now because I'm not being lucky, whatever, but I'm telling you, if you do this over and over and over, you'll always have a stash full of crossbows that you can cycle through, that you can craft, and eventually you hit something good. Flat fizz, percentage fizz, levels to projectiles, and from there you just get a lucky Exile, and it's very inexpensive, and you can get a really multi-divine weapon craft with spending maybe like 1 to 5 exiles worth on it. So, alright, so I reforged this one. Not good. These 3, I'm going to reforge. This one has a good, or decent physical damage. Oh yeah, I remember this one. Okay. This is something to consider. I'm going to explain that real quick. When you craft crossbows, sometimes you'll see a physical increased damage roll that looks bad because it's not as high. But there are hybrid rolls that roll with 2 stats in one. So it's got this one's got percentage fizz with accuracy rating, and it's actually tier 8 or tier 6, is it? Yeah, tier 6, I think. Am I right in saying this? Though that's not the case, I think. Sorry. Okay, this is not a good example. But yeah, there are sometimes you can have a roll that looks rather bad because the fizz percentage is not too high, but it's not high because it's part of a hybrid roll. And those are worth keeping because you can roll into another fizz percentage roll and then a flat fizz, and it becomes a godly crossbow. Kind of like, not this one, but this one. Kind of like that. See here? 203% increased physical damage. Doesn't have the +2 levels, but notice how there's a tier 7% fizz damage here. That looks really high, right? 169. And it's accompanied by a average fizz percentage roll and accuracy roll. This is a hybrid stat, right? If it were higher, let's say tier 6, 7, 8, this number would show something like 60, 70% fizz damage. Doesn't look impressive at first, but it's actually really good because the godly best in slot crossbow roll that you could get is the hybrid roll like this with a big fat fizz percentage roll and a big fat flat fizz percentage roll. Flat fizz roll without percentage. Those 3 together make a really high DPS weapon, right? Or really high physical damage weapon. And the physical damage is really important because all your skills, most of them, they scale from converting a percentage of your physical damage into elemental damage. So in the case of Voltaic Grenade, the conversion percentage is quite high, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it converts 80% of your physical damage to lightning damage, so you want as much physical damage as you can get in this instance. So, I'm going to reforge these 3, because it doesn't have the hybrid, I think. And we get something half decent, so it's going in the stash. So I would do this repeatedly, and this is just after running 2-3 maps that I get so many crossbows, because when you pick up all the white, blue, and rare crossbows that fit the criterias, you really fill that stash quickly, and then you just reforge, you craft, and it's never very, very expensive, because the only thing you're spending is augmentation orbs, transmute orbs that are really cheap. Sometimes a essence if you have it. Sometimes an exalt if you hit something good, and from there sometimes a chaos orb. So it's usually like, say you run 10, 15 maps, you might spend the equivalent of like 5 exalts on a few crossbows, not per crossbow but total. Like after like 10, 15 maps, maybe you spent 5 exalts, exalting or slamming the lucky rolls that you got on your transmute and augs. So yeah, and it's a very simple process and expensive. That's if you don't want to spend crazy currency, or if you have the currency, then you can go ahead and just buy the weapon you want. So there you have it, a very, very fun build for the Mercenary. Not perfect by any means, definitely room for improvement. Feel free to comment on the video, let me know what you thought about the build. Let me know how it goes when you try it. Let me know if you find it more fun than other builds that you've tried. I know that for a fact that I found it much more fun than the just traditional poison grenade build that everybody was playing, which is fine. It's a good build, but I think this is fun, and given how good the graphics look in PoE2 with the electrical animations as well as fire and stuff like that, it's really fun to enjoy a build like this. It feels a bit less, well, it's more pleasant graphically because the explosive grenade build and poison grenade build is just a big smoke cloud. Every time you launch a grenade, you just have like a big pile of smoke and debris. It's not as satisfying as playing. This is really nice. Seeing all those mobs paralyzed and shocked, and just, it's just fun. You feel like a god amongst men. I like it. So there you go. I'll stop here. Feel free to comment, like the video if it was useful to you. It's always fun to hear your thoughts, so let me know. Good luck, Exile.